had to play this song as our intro today. Because many days, Alicia, I truly do feel like an emotional mess. There is nothing that could have prepared me for these days of immigration when I started my practice so many years ago. And who in the world would have thought that we would be in a situation where there are just so few options for people? People's hopes and dreams were all lined up to become permanent residents. They sacrificed so much to be here in Canada, only to be told, our bad. We let too many of you in, and now you just need to go home. So, usually when people are in their most dire moments and they have run out of options, that's when they tend to book consultations with us. And it's unbelievably rewarding when we're able to find pathways forward for people. But it is an emotional roller coaster that is extremely draining, having to reason things out with people and help them come to the conclusion that at times, and in many circumstances, going home is the best option because all other avenues have come to an end. So I don't know what your thoughts are, but boy, an emotional mess is pretty much how I'm feeling, the last, 5 to 6 months for sure.
Yeah, there's lots going on right now, and I think a lot of people have a lot of legitimate worry about how things are unfolding on a number of different fronts. So yeah, I get it. It definitely is resonating with a number of people right now.
Well, folks, big shout out to everybody who's tuning in from all over the world. If this is your first time connecting in with a Canadian Immigration Live Q&A, we've been doing this for years. Alicia and I have been kind of tag teaming this, and we've been trying to basically provide as much help and information as we can. And of course, you're watching this free. And some people will go to our website and they'll say, oh, you guys charge for your consultations. How come we don't offer a free consultation? Well, the reality is we do our very best to leverage our knowledge and experience to the greatest extent possible. And one way we found to do that is through these live Q&As. So you who are watching this has the opportunity to post a question. Remember that there is a little bit of a limitation here. Oh, we still got that plane. There's a little bit of a limitation on the kinds of questions that can be asked. If you hear this little triangle, that means that your question really is super specific and something that would require a consultation. So whenever you're asking, should I, or how do I, those generally are ones that are going to get a little triangle. However, if you're saying, how does this work within immigration? What does this mean within the immigration requirements? Oh, those are the ones that are definitely going to get selected. So sometimes people will post a question. They'll say, hey, Mark, you skipped me. Well, the reason I often will skip is if it is a very specific question. And so if that is the case, we strongly encourage you to slide over to our firm website, click on book a consultation, and then you can go from there to schedule. It's super easy. Even while we're here doing this live, you can schedule consults with Alicia and I. Now, we are extremely busy, but notwithstanding that, and everybody that's a representative pretty much these days is pretty busy, but we do our very best to try to accommodate people. And it's a simple matter of going to our site, selecting the times that you can see are available. You can see Alicia's pretty busy this week. Her next availability is on the 24th. You click on it. Boom, there you go. If we go back to myself and Igor, we're both also here. And so if you go to mine, I don't even know what my schedule is. So if we look here, okay, well, I've got spots that are available tomorrow. So you can see we always try to accommodate. And even on Monday, you guys, I had a bunch of clients that had a lot of urgent matters, and I had a very full day from about 7, I think I started, till about 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening. So we do our very best to be available for you. And so if you do have a specific concern or a question, please just book a consult and we can help you resolve it. Alicia, I had a bunch of consults this week where individuals had made simple little mistakes on their application, which is, it's all we see. It's all we see. In one case, a family whose documents are expiring in April, work permits expiring in April, they can't extend them. They were counting on the EAPR to be filed so they could get their bridging open work permits. Well, in their case, they got an ITA, but when they filed the application last summer, it's taken until now for the officer to say, hey, you did not provide sufficient duties to establish that you actually performed the work you're claiming in your knock. And that's something that we address like extensively with our clients. It's covered at length as well, how to deal with it so you never fall into that situation within our courses. And tonight, I actually have another live Q&A tonight. I had to reschedule from last week. But every 2 weeks when you subscribe to the Express Entry Accelerator course, you can join me as many times as you need to. We're going to definitely be having a 2025 edition as soon as the government removes the actual job offer points, and then we'll have to restructure some of the lessons. But ultimately, if you have not seen the Express Entry Accelerator course, this, like I said, there's a masterclass associated with it, but there is just an absolute ton of information that's specifically designed to cover every aspect of Express Entry that people trip up with. And this thing has been, I don't know, 4 or 5 different renditions. There's over 10 hours of content. Each individual lesson covers every aspect of the process, from completing your profile, if you're an individual, spouse, child, and they're all broken down into individual lessons so that people, you just choose the ones that apply to you, the ones that you need assistance with. The EAPR, the document checklist, and the one I love most, Alicia, is the mastering your documents, because this is specifically in detail, records of employment, covers all of that information on avoiding getting your application rejected because you haven't provided enough evidence to prove your work history. So, it is, it's crazy world. And I can honestly say, everyone, there are very, very few people that will ever get a second chance now. You may have one chance, and that's it. And, for a long time, I always would say, this could be your only shot, but if you have the ability to extend your work permit, the CRS points continue to stay where they're at, then, you'll probably have another shot, but not anymore. The vast majority of people are not able to extend their work permits. And if you do have the fortune, the very good fortune of receiving an invitation to apply, then this may be your only shot. And so when I talk about this course at length, some people just want to do it themselves, and we get that. Alicia and I have, we're full. Like we're literally full of people that we're doing applications for. I just had a consult yesterday with someone, and I explained that, okay, well, we'll leave it open for 1 week for you to choose whether you want to retain us to hire you. But after that, there's so many other people coming in, and we, Alicia, myself, Igor, we will not take more people than we have the capacity to help. And then we can devote all of our attention without making people feel like, they're just a number. So anyways, we'll leave it at that. Okay, if this is your first time, please make sure you leave us a little comment where you're from, where you're tuning in from. We've got Spider-Man, who's still here with you guys. That's great. Philip says, thank you for your lives. It's an amazing initiative. It has been around for a very long time. Just like Hassan, make sure you tell us where you're tuning in from. So Hassan's up in Fort McMurray, Alberta. Great. I hope what's the temperature up there, Hassan?
Like minus 50 probably.
I'm curious what it is. I don't think I have it on my phone here, but I'm gonna ask you, Hassan, and actually all of you. Like it's pretty darn cold right here. Let's see what we've got. Well, Lethbridge is not too bad. It's supposed to warm up, but we are facing down here a low of minus 27 today. So
Oh man,
I
it
don't know
was
what that
minus
is with the
27
wind
this
chill.
morning, like actual temperature, minus 27
Yeah.
in Calgary, minus 37 with wind chill this morning.
Yeah, super cold. So
Yeah.
hopefully your vehicles are still driving. Hopefully you're not frozen by the time you catch your commute. But I'd love to hear what temperature it is all across Canada for those of you who are tuning in. So we'll see, Alicia, once we get to that. But why don't we start off with Hassan? What's the temperature up there, my friend? Okay, so those of you who are posting questions, that's exactly what we want. We do have a few supers, and I try to get to those as soon as we can. So let's just see if I can find, Abhishek's question. So the first super was from Abhishek, and he says, my Express Entry profile expired, and I also have withdrawn profile from the pool. I've not been able to create a new profile as the option Express Entry does not pop on my screen. Any idea? So Abhishek, usually express entry doesn't appear because you have another pool or there's something that's still open. If you're in a situation where you just don't see it's not visible, then there's must be some kind of a problem with when you withdrew your profile, that it's kind of hung up in the system. In a worst case scenario, if you can't figure it out, I once again encourage you to book a consult so I can make sure that there isn't a, something else that you can do. In some cases like that, then I would create a new GC key and submit a new profile. Because if you're locked somehow, it's usually because there's an active application and you can't have more than one profile going at the same time. If you scroll down, you may see one that's been initiated or started, and that's why you can't create another one. But there are glitches. And so I don't know if you have any other thoughts on this, Alicia, but that's usually when we can't see it, it's because it's hung up somehow because there's another one partially completed or still active.
Yeah, and I'd say wait a couple days because sometimes it takes a few days for everything to clear out of the system. Just like, if you're getting an ITA, sometimes it takes up to 24 or 48 hours for that ITA to actually land in your account. But yeah, I don't like ever creating another GC key because it can mess things up if you're using similar emails or you're getting messages to different accounts on GC key. So there is a risk in creating a second GC key. But yeah, you're right, Mark, because I had a client yesterday. I was trying to help them. There's the Iranian temporary public policy. It's coming to an end right away at the end of February. So February 28th is the last day to do that Iranian public policy open work permit. And these clients had come to me because a consultant had helped them, but had not filed the right application. They hadn't actually submitted it as a work permit application to get that extension. And so when they applied for the TRV was only issued to the expiry of the first document. And so I realized they had done the wrong type of application. They hired me, we went in, and then after the work permit got approved, they wanted to be able to have another visitor visa. And so it's tricky in the portal because it won't give you the option if you have a draft application, just like Mark was saying. If you have another draft application in the queue, it won't give you the option to apply for another visitor visa, for example. And so that was where we had to go through and figure out and answer the questionnaire wizard again to try to get the right document checklist to populate. So it is a thing that requires a little bit of drilling down and trying to figure out what's happening in your profile.
Yeah. All right, we'll pull up this one. Now this one, KZR, may be one that I have to triangle, but it's a super, so we'll pull it up. Says I, and once again, these are all I questions, okay? And these are ones that really are here, even though you've got a super. So it says, let's see if we can pull something out of here. We always try to pull something. I live, work in Ontario. I plan to enroll in a full-time, fully online, 1-year graduate certificate of master's from an eligible Ontario institution. So the issue here, Alicia, is fully online. Will I be eligible for the OINP ISS / master's streams, so international student stream, master's streams? If it is part-time over 2 years, would I still qualify? So this one, like Alicia and I would love to just answer your question, KZR, but we really need to understand what the program is, what school, and take a careful look at what the rules are. How IRCC treats things may be different than the OINP. And so we're absolutely reluctant to say, yes, you qualify or no, without knowing a whole bunch more information. The last thing we want to do is say, yeah, you do. And then you enter the program, you study for 2 years, and then realize that there's been a change, or that somehow we missed some information that was essential, and then you relied on it to your detriment. And that's always what Alicia and I are very careful with within these live Q&As. So KZR, we strongly recommend that you slide over to our website and just book a consultation with one of us, and we can take a look and do a deep dive. Because if you're making this kind of a decision, paying that kind of money for a master's, you need to make sure that there are pathways forward. And we don't even know if you've already burned up your postgrad work permit, right? There's a whole bunch of other factors. If you're going to go down that route and then go through the OINP, often they want to know that you actually have a postgrad, and there are other factors that come into play, in addition to whether or not you've completed a master's program. Online versus in person, we know for express entry purposes, Online studies are traditionally not something that they currently are giving points for. So lots of minefields there that we need to canvas, but hopefully we can connect with you offline through the other means. Mm-hmm.
And I will add to that too, and just say in general, under the OINP master stream, you can scroll down to the section on education, and it does say that if you are wanting to qualify for that subcategory, you have to have at least one academic year of full-time study. It does say part-time studies might qualify if the program is equivalent to at least one full-time academic year, but that's just in general, so it's important to be super careful. And you'd also want to go and cross-reference Section 8 of the Ontario regulation to actually drill down and take a look at what the legislation says also.
Yes. All right, we'll pull up Marco's comment. We pull up everything here. He says, Chrystia Freeland now claims she'll tie immigration to housing completions. If only she had thought of this during her decade in government. Politics. Unfortunately, that is what's driving a lot of these decisions. And, at the end of the day, Alicia and I are here to try to help you in the best ways that we can. But it's sad how much immigration is influenced by politics. And it's amazing when people want to get reelected, boy, their position will completely change from one day to the next. And it does not matter, you guys, which political party it is. It is always, it's always a hot button topic for politics. Okay. Yasser says, good evening, Mark. Sending my regards from Iraq. Welcome. That's great. Great to have you here. We'll give you some applause for that. I don't think we've had someone from Iraq for quite a while. So welcome, Yasser. It's great to have you here. Okay. Let's see what else we have. I want to see if we've got any temperatures here. I thought maybe more people would post, but I guess they haven't. I wanted to know what temperature it is in your side of the world, but it looks like
Oh no, Hassan did. He said around minus
yeah,
27 to minus 34.
Do you know what? I skipped through them. So Varen says it's minus 27 in London. Melody is in Toronto. Oh yeah, Hassan said minus 27 to minus 34. Okay, good. And the rest of you, we'd love to hear what's the temperature and where you're located across this fine country. All right. Let's see what's next here. We'll pull up a few more. Give me a second. All right. Okay, let's go with Panasar here. He said, I got refusal of a spousal open work permit without a relevant reason. What I should do now, reapply or file a case in federal court. So I'm going to just slide over, Alicia, to our firm website. I'm going to go back to the main screen. And in the top menu bar here, you will see that we have refusals and delays, judicial review, reconsideration, mandamus. I strongly encourage that you slide over to our website and just read and educate yourself on, what should you do if your immigration application to Canada is refused. And this is a great resource that covers all the different options, especially when it comes to deciding whether or not to file a judicial review. And the same thing goes within that same category here, refusals and delays, reconsideration requests. Do I try to request reconsideration, and is it worth it? And some of the factors that they look at. And Igor's got a lot of good information here that is designed to help you in making those very difficult decisions. But this is the trend we're seeing, Alicia, with the complete rollout of Chinook and all its iterations. There are fewer and fewer reasons being provided to people. And I remember sitting in a call with IRCC where we looked at refusal letters, and they had made the decision at that time that they were going to push forward towards providing the GCMS notes, essentially bundled together with the refusal as a separate add-on. It does not take much at all to do that, but it hasn't happened. And in fact, as far as I'm concerned, they've gone the opposite way. And unfortunately, the courts have been, kind of wishy-washy with this in terms of the detail and the degree to which they have to explain their reasons. And when you have millions of applications going through the system, IRCC's justification is that we just don't have time to provide fulsome reasons for every individual, and people have access to the ATIPs to get the GCMS notes, and that is sufficient. But when there are no relevant reasons, Panasar, that definitely hints at the possibility of a judicial review and a leave application. So, um, yes, is the short answer. So I recommend you book a consult. Remember, there are limitation periods, and for how fast you have to actually file, and it's 15 days if your decision was made within Canada. If you got a spousal open work permit, I don't know if that's in Canada or outside. We just don't know, Panesar. If it's in, it's 15 days. If it's outside, it is 60 days to file that leave application. So you have to act quickly.
And the other thing that I will say too is that I think both you and I and Igor noticed a fairly large surge right before that January 21st. So, as most people may or may not know, January 21st was the date that IRCC significantly changed the open spousal work permit provisions for people who are spouses of high and low skilled workers, and also for people who are spouses of students. Well, they had done the student changes earlier, but they just reinforced them now again. And so, as of January 21st, the new rules applied. And so I think what was happening was that a lot of the legacy cases, a lot of the cases that had been filed prior to January 21st, where maybe the principal applicant spouse was applying, so they had completed a program of studies and they were applying for a PGWP, maybe that spouse couldn't get a job right away. And so then they had their accompanying spouse wait for a few months to file the open spousal work permit so that, they showed, well, I have a job and the spouse is filing. Well, what happened, it seems like, is that IRCC started going through their files and they started making decisions on the accompanying spouse's application before making a decision on the principal applicant's decision, which means that automatically the accompanying spouse's application was refused if the principal applicant didn't yet have their PGWP approved, which is mean. So I think a lot of people are in a situation where they've received a number of refusals and now the new rules apply and they may no longer be eligible for an open spousal work permit. So there are significant consequences here. So please, Panesar, book a consult.
Yeah. And I'd encourage you to go watch this video that Igor and I did. This was kind of a spur of the moment video, spousal open work permit refusals, revealing IRCC nasty practices. And I didn't know how else to describe it because it was really sharp practice. And I think, this is one I brought up to, pointed specifically to the minister. You need to look at your department because this is not how our country operates. This isn't how our immigration program operates. And I would really, if they were lawyers, I would classify that as sharp practice. So technically they can do whatever they want, but the reality is just fairness and just doing things in a way that we as Canadians would agree is fair is yeah, there was a departure here with these ones. So
Decency,
definitely.
yes.
Yeah. Just be kind. Like you can still refuse an application, but be fair. Okay, we've got a super here. I was trying to find Nicole's super fan character laughing out loud with tears in their eyes. So here's this is the one challenge the emojis don't translate over. So Nicole, oh, okay. Nicole Geronimo, hi from Coaldale, got a referral from Mark, had a procedural fairness letter, PFL. Spouse got an exclusion order. PR refused, got another nomination, express entry. Close to getting PR. Thanks, Mark. Yeah, it was what a crazy, crazy situation. Thanks for connecting, Nicole. Thanks for connecting. Okay, let's zip through here. Let's see. I think we might have
And
another
maybe
one. Yep.
Maybe on that point, Mark, I just want to send a little shout out to Igor because just
Mm-hmm.
like Nicole,
Oh
um,
yeah,
Igor had a great win just recently in the Immigration Appeal Division because, and
huge.
we have to respect client confidentiality, but it was a
Mm-hmm.
situation where a couple had filed a spousal sponsorship application, and as part of that spousal sponsorship, they had to get a police certificate, and IRCC alleged that the police certificate was fraudulent and they slapped
Mm-hmm.
misrepresentation on the person that was applying to come. And they said, you're barred for 5 years.
Yeah.
And so Igor took this to the Immigration Appeal Division because it was an outside Canada family class sponsorship. So they had a right of appeal. And there was a lot of evidence that had to go into this and a lot of
Mm-hmm.
preparation. And, this would have been devastating for this couple because they'd been separated for so long. There was a lot of factors about like the spouse in Canada was supporting many family members. And Igor won. And so
Yeah.
that decision, that refusal for misrepresentation and the 5-year bar was set aside. In the alternative, they said, yeah, there's significant humanitarian and compassionate reasons here that this couple should not be separated. And so it's going to go back for redetermination to another officer on that spousal sponsorship. And so sometimes it really seems like it's the end of the road. And depending on what's happened and the evidence that you presented, sometimes it's possible to save it. It is a lot of work. It is an uphill battle, but
It
sometimes
is.
we are able to save it.
Yeah. And I know the amount of work that Igor put into this, way, way more than he ever got paid for. But once you become, when you become committed to your client's cause, and you do what you need to do to advocate very aggressively for them. And in this case, I think many people would have just rolled over and said, well, it's too hard to try to disprove this alleged fraud. And, there's some evidence there, and an officer could have, made that interpretation. Like this was not something that we see a lot in our federal court applications, our leave applications, where DOJ looks at it and says, yeah, you're right, you guys, this was a bad decision, and we're going to consent and send it back without having to actually go. This was contested, and the hearings officer, she was definitely advocating that the decision was correct. And Igor, in the day, because, at the end of the day, was very successful because of the work that he put in. And so, yeah, kudos to him, and he deserves some applause. I know he'll probably have a little bit more information on that one, but this was a really ugly one. And yeah, good for you, Igor. Way to go. Way to go. All right. We have one from Isabella. She says, hi, guys. I looked at IRCC draws yesterday, but the numbers at the frequency won't add up to the targets in the levels plan, much less. I'm confused. Okay. This is what we see a lot, you guys. So let's pull up. I know I have these rounds of invitations here somewhere. There they are. It's important to understand the difference between the actual, numbers of invitations issued and the ultimate annual levels plans. They are two different things. So the levels plans are how many individuals are actually going to become a permanent resident and land in Canada. The invitations that are issued are just that. They're an invitation to apply. Some people, they book a consult with us, and after going through, we realize they weren't qualified. So they decline the invitation and go back, sometimes multiple times. And then there's others who submit their applications and they're rejected for a number of reasons. And we're seeing more and more rejections. I'd love to see the stats right now, Alicia, but I like anecdotally, we don't see the whole world. And I know there are out there, and I'll have to take a look, but I just can't, I don't know. I can't see there not being an increase in refusals within express entry. But here's a strange thing, Alicia. I think I'm meeting with them on Thursday, tomorrow morning, to finalize a response to a procedural fairness letter. But this couple from Cameroon got not one, but two procedural fairness letters in the context of their express entry application. Just crazy. And in the end, I'm really kind of doubtful that well, I'm hopeful. I'm hopefully optimistic that we can fix it, but I think they chose the wrong knock code too. And
Oh, no.
so I'm going to try to convince IRCC that that the proper knock code, we still have time to change that because the decision has not been made. And hey, they asked us to provide further evidence. So and they didn't misrepresent anything within their application. It was just a matter of them choosing the wrong knock code. So yeah, anyways, so it's just all over the map. And yeah, the most recent draw, for those of you who are curious, we had a provincial nominee draw just a couple days ago on, I guess it would have been Monday. It was just small, 646, but this is very telling as far as I'm concerned, Alicia. They decided they were going to pull only 646, and that is an extremely low number for PNP. But what's even more interesting, when they do smaller numbers, usually the CRS score is correspondingly higher. But in this case, the lowest score was 750, which there's a number of factors. One is the complete pause across the country of PNPs issuing nominations because they had no clue what they were going to get this year. And with the messages that were being sent by Minister Miller that some provinces weren't taking their fair share of refugees. And then ultimately confirming that he was reducing the economic nominations, which I really think is not very cool, Minister. Provinces were kind of suspended and had their hands tied. So I think to a large extent, that's probably why the numbers are a little bit lower. But yeah, fortunately, things are moving forward. I have another client that got an accelerated tech notification of interest. And so that's positive, and we're working through that. But it's an interesting time for immigration. All right, let's jump over here and get to the next one. I will call my mother back, who's trying to reach me. Okay, let's jump. So Isabella, the reality is, and actually let's finish with her question. I kind of stalled out here. If you look at the score distribution for the candidates, this does not equate. Like it doesn't match up. One of the things that I want to show you is that if you look at the date, the date and time was February the 17th. And then this score is as of February the 16th. So it's the day before. So I don't know if it's possible. So if they basically drew 646, what this means is it could be that in that one day from the 16th to the 17th, that there was a bunch that went through. But you also need to take a look at this. The tie-breaking rule was July 23rd, 2024. So anyone who submitted their profile after July 23rd, 2024 would not have received an invitation. And so they just basically said, we're going to do the lowest rank. We're going to set the pass mark at 750. And so anyone that was right at 750 points, and if they submitted their application after July 23rd, 2024, would not have gotten drawn. Now, I can't say that there's 100 people at that level. It could be that there's, a bunch of people submitted their profiles that were maybe above 750, but all submitted them in between the 16th and the 17th. So this I think is what she's looking at. And yeah, I don't know if you have any other
and also
insight.
looking at the overall like targets, right, for express entry and for the economic targets, when we look at what are the levels in the levels plan that are set annually, it's kind of a rolling total. And so when IRCC is doing the express entry invitations to apply, they will continue to do that. And then keep in mind that the processing time for an application once you've submitted that EAPR is going to be about 6 months. And so you kind of have to shift everything by about 6 months to try to figure out what it's going to be for a calendar year. And so when we look at this, we do know that across the board, the overall number of people that we're going to grant permanent residence to has come down. It came down significantly because the political goal right now is basically not to increase our population, to have it level to slightly declining, and that's the policy goal. So they're going to achieve that by having fewer applications approved across the board. That's for economic, that's for people with in Canada experience like CEC, it's for applications for reunification for family members under the spousal sponsorships and family sponsorships. So it's going to affect things quite significantly. And I saw some comments too about long processing times. And this is, again, the way that you slow things down is by drawing it all out and making those processing times longer. So that could be what we're going to see too.
Mm-hmm. I want to share one other thing that was very surprising for some clients that I had. Shout out to them. They're both streamers, so they make their living online, and I don't make my living through YouTube ads. But the reality is, yeah, I'm not on Stitch or anyways. So the interesting thing, Alicia, that I wanted to share is that we submitted their visitor extension application. I think it was, let's see, when did they come back? It was, I think, the 26th or 27th visitor extension. And if we look at the current processing times for visitor extensions, let's see, IRCC processing times. Let's pull it up quick here. And we go to temporary residents and we go to visitors and we click on here. You will see at the time we submitted it, I think it was 140 days. But just as of yesterday, it's at 119 days. Well, Alicia, their visitor record extension was processed in under 1 month. It was actually approved the end of January. We filed the visitor extension, and then we subsequently filed their spousal sponsorship, I think January 4th or 5th. They've got their acknowledgement of receipt. They just received it 2 days
Wow.
ago. So the acknowledgement of receipt was, well, actually it was about a week ago. That acknowledgement of receipt was just a little over a month. And so now we're filing the work permit application for her, which is the really important thing. We've seen the processing times for spousals in Canada go off the charts. So
Yeah.
if your spouse or common law partner is living in Canada and we're outside Quebec, the processing times are now astronomically high at 28 months. They
Yeah.
went from 12 to 24 to 28, and this was last updated February the 5th. So maybe this is the bone immigration is trying to throw. But as you and I found, and this is another thing, Alicia, I don't know where this came from, because for this couple, this individual client may very well have been eligible for this, but I don't know if I can just find it here. Maybe I'll look it up. But this provision that's for
Mm-hmm.
spousals, I think they could have benefited from it. But I had no clue it was there. Once again,
Yeah.
immigration at making little changes and not really notifying people. Okay, let's go to some more questions here. Let's jump in. We've got a lot of good questions. Let's see what is next on our list. Okay. Arinzi says, greetings. I'm a visitor in Canada. Just got an LMIA already approved, job and trade. What do you advise I do about exit and apply for the job outside Canada? I was told there was a way you can apply within. So,
Oh, all right. So Arinzi, this is a ring the kind of triangle, because we would need to get more information, because you're saying, what do I do? What's the advice to me? In general, immigration took away, there was a temporary public policy that allowed visitors to change their status from inside Canada to apply for a work permit if they had an employer who got an LMIA. They took that provision away generally. So in most cases, it is no longer possible to change from visitor to worker status unless you also had a valid work permit, and that work permit or study permit is still valid and you're eligible to change your status. So that is something that would need to be explored. The other thing is, you're a citizen of which country? Because some citizens need to have a ETA, an electronic travel authorization. Most citizens of other countries require visitor visas as well. So that is something that we would need to discuss to try to figure out, okay, well, if you're going to leave, where are you going to leave to, and how would you come back in? Do you need a new visa? Would you be eligible to wait in a country in order for that work permit to be processed? Only a very few number of people are allowed to apply if they actually are visa exempt and they have a positive LMIA. Only a very few number of people are allowed to apply at the port of entry, and in general, most people are not. So there's a number of things that we'd need to discuss to try to figure out what your options are in terms of where you submit that work permit application.
okay, we'll pull up the next one, Daniela. She says, hi, Mark. Thanks for this time. To support my foreign experience, I have the pay slips from the company I worked, about 100 sheets. Whoa, that's a lot. Do I have to attach all of them and their translation to English? Yeah, Daniela, that's a lot of money if you're going to translate all those. I do not translate all of them. In fact, this is what I teach in my Express Entry Accelerator course, and we use with our clients. I always include, 2 or 3 from the very beginning of work, maybe 1 or 2 from each year in between that you're claiming points for, and then the last 3. So that might be even more than is necessary, but for our purposes, I don't include all of them. And then in a letter of explanation, I say, please note, I have over 100 of these, but I'm just going to include the ones that show the start, that I was still working, and the end. And I know that that is sufficient, because I've had procedural fairness letters that have come back for when people have booked consults after the fact with me. And IRCC has asked them to provide payroll records to show that they started work when they said they started work. So that's one strategy that we employ. And when you're fighting 4 megabyte maximum space and you can only reduce your file sizes down so much. It's just not practical and not feasible. And really, any officer who says, "Oh no, I want to see all 100 sheets," well, I'm pretty sure we could. That's a reviewable error in federal court. Okay, Tristan, this one is really a booker of a consult. It says, how does a temporary foreign worker, farm worker, get PR? So there are programs out there that may work, but we don't know anything about your position. We don't know the knock code. We don't know where you're working. We don't know how long you've been working. And all of these factors affect the eligibility for any of these, whether it's agri-food, whether it's through a rural renewal stream, whether it's through one of the provincial nominee municipal streams or our new rural community immigration pilot. So there's a lot of different options, and it just depends on each individual. It depends on your circumstances and if you meet the eligibility criteria. So recommend that you book a consult, Tristan. Okay, let's go to Marco. He says, "Hi there. Is it okay to claim Canadian experience in express entry from 2 years ago without claiming in the last year? I mean, does it matter? Or we can claim the experience we want. Thanks a lot." So I guess for CEC, do you want to tackle that, Alicia?
Yeah, so Marco, in order to claim valid CEC work experience, you have to be looking at a time period within the last 3 years from the date of the calculation of points. And so if your question is, well, I was working for a good employer 2 years ago, and in the last year I was working for an employer and we're not really on good terms, and that person's probably not going to give me a letter to back up my experience, then yeah, you could go back and you could claim the older employer, the one that you can get your letter of experience from, that you have your pay stubs, you've got your T4 statements for your Canadian work experience, and you can claim the work experience that you want to claim. You have to properly pick the knock. You have to show that your job lead activities of your job and the majority of the main duties and the bullet points match with what you say they are or your employer says that they are. But you can choose. You don't have to also include the most recent employment period. It's up to you to say, here are the points that I'm claiming, and here's the backup evidence to substantiate those points. One thing that does cause trouble is if people just didn't disclose some of their work experience. So for example, if you filed a study permit extension or a PGWP application or another work permit extension and you didn't list some of your work experience, it's possible you can get into problems with potential misrepresentation if you turn around and try to claim something on your express entry profile that you never disclosed to immigration before and you logically should have. So those are some of the things that we would talk to you about.
You bet. Okay, Dare Rose here, another super, says, "Can I work remotely for a company based in my home country while living in another country, not Canada, and have it qualify as foreign work experience?" Well, yes, you can, Dare. It's entirely possible to do that. And so you just have to make sure that you are clearly establishing everything that IRCC is looking for. Sometimes with freelance work or remote work, there is some possibility that maybe you're not working full time, the full 30 hours a week, or that your work is more part time. So you need to make very clear to the officer within the evidence you provide, the reference letter, pay slips, pay stubs, tax filings, whatever it may be, that yes, indeed, you worked at least 30 hours a week. It was full time. If when it comes to qualifying through the federal skilled worker program, it needs to be continuous for at least a year in the same knock. Yeah, and so basically, you can. It's just a matter of making sure that you do it properly, you do it correctly, and these things are all covered once again in the course. And if you do have any issues, don't hesitate to reach out and book a consult. Anything else to add, Alicia, to that one?
Yeah, and it's just also determining whether that's self-employment or employment experience. And that sometimes
Mhm.
becomes a little bit tricky depending on your designation with your company. So I know I've had some self-employed individuals where they partially owned a business and maybe they were doing, like, for example, counseling. They were mental health therapists. And so it can become fairly complex in trying to prove your hours, because if some of your hours were at a clinic and some of your hours were when you were doing private practice, for example, then you've got to be able to draw up your timesheets and show your invoices and make that data anonymous if you have confidential client information. So there's, you are allowed to claim self-employed work experience, but you have to do a very good job, just like Mark said, and being diligent with your evidence.
All right, next, Adnan says, how long is AWAR taking under non-express entry? Applied on December 30th after I got my Alberta PNP. Maybe, Alicia, you can just kind of touch on the difference between express entry and the acknowledgement of receipt and when you can file a bridge versus, and highlight our other little bridge podcast episode.
Mm-hmm. So Mark and I had just recorded a podcast, and also there's a video that goes along for it, as well as I had written an article on our website. And so it's all about bridging open work permits versus bridging closed work permits, what the differences are. And yeah, for sure, there's a difference between your acknowledgement of receipt on an express entry application, which comes pretty much immediately after you file your EAPR, and your acknowledgement of receipt on a non-express entry linked application. So if you were doing PNP under Alberta and it was one of the express entry streams like AOS, for example, then it might be a number of months before you actually, once you've filed your PR portal application, it might be a few months before you actually get that acknowledgement of receipt. So, it could be up to 3 or 4 months before you get that acknowledgement of receipt. In some circumstances, we've heard a little bit longer than that, which does make it difficult for people if their work permits are running out.
All right. I'm just pulling up a few here. Lisa says, if you submit the application on 2023, but this one expired, and you resubmit another in 2024, which one counts for the draws? Well, it's the one that you've resubmitted. So if it's your profile you're referring to, once it expires after a year, then you have to resubmit a new one, and then that's the one that counts for, being considered for the draws. KF says, I got my passport with the Canada visa. When should I receive my plane ticket? Since I got my passport 6 days ago, my work permit is temporary foreign worker through LMIA. Does my employer or immigration decide when can I enter? So do you want to talk just briefly about kind of the visa and the entry and the expiry and that kind of stuff? Which I'm going to ring this right here, KF, because this is, as always, we don't want to give you advice that you're going to then rely on without having all the facts. So once again, for everyone, we strongly encourage you to slide over to our website. There's links in the description. You can just click on book a consult, and that's what we would encourage you to do, because we don't want you making a decision on advice we give you with insufficient facts. So Alicia, do you want to talk just generally about kind of how the process works?
Yeah, so KF, especially if it's an LMIA based work permit, it really depends on what is the start date on your job offer. So in most cases, your employer should have signed a job offer or an employment contract with you, and that will have a start date. The other thing that will happen is that LMIA will have a validity date. And so it's important that, of course, yeah, you submitted your application for your work permit within the time where your LMIA was still valid. And it sounds like you did, and your application for your work permit is being processed, and you've received that visa counterfoil in your passport, which is great. Now it's a matter of, okay, depending on whether it's a high wage or a low wage LMIA, employers have different obligations to employees. So if it's a low wage LMIA, the employer normally has an obligation to actually pay for your plane ticket from whatever country you're in to come to Canada. So normally in a low wage situation, the employer has to pay for that. So it would be the employer who has to book that plane ticket for you and pay for it, so that you can come to your work site. If it's a high wage situation where you are in a high wage LMIA, there's no employer obligation to do that. Sometimes they do, it depends on the employer. But normally the employer will tell you, okay, we're ready, everything is good for you now to come to Canada and start work. But those details might be in your employment contract as well. So make sure to talk with your employer, make sure to get a copy of the LMIA so that you understand what the LMIA says in terms of the length of time that LMIA is valid for. So they will also say when the LMIA expires, but then they'll also say how long the LMIA opinion is valid for the work permit. So that is going to determine the length of duration that the officer gives on the work permit. Once you have that visa in your passport, you also need an approval letter on the work permit application itself. So usually if they've approved the visa, that work permit letter should be coming soon if you don't already have it, but you need both of those things in hand, plus a copy of the LMIA, plus usually your job offer contract or letter from the employer. And that's what you bring with you when you get on the airplane. And it's actually when you come into Canada at the airport that an officer would actually grant you the work permit. And you have to make sure that all the details on that work permit are correct. So there are a few moving parts, and make sure that you're coordinating with your employer and that they're helping you with that process so that you can make sure that you're not coming too early on that work permit.
Okay, I'm going to pull this one up here. This is Alicia also asked this question. Mark and Alicia, do you know a lawyer or immigration consultant for free or have a payment plan? Well, I know most, like obviously individuals that are acting as regulated representatives, this is their livelihood. So they don't typically do work for free, but as lawyers, on occasion, when we have some clients and circumstances justify it, we do take some clients on as pro bono, and we feel this is an obligation. The fact that we're even doing this is one of the things that Alicia and I do as a way of giving back and doing pro bono work for individuals within our firm. But I recently, I'll give you an example. So there was a young mother who had 3 children in Canada. Her husband was a schmuck, and she basically, it was a horribly abusive environment for her, and she was in a women's shelter when she ultimately contacted us, and we took that H&C application on pro bono and helped her, and now she's a permanent resident. So on occasion, when there is circumstances like that where people are in real need, and they don't have any method or mechanism for helping themselves, we do take those on. I know Alicia did a lot of really good work in a number of different situations with adoptions. Now those, there was a lot of low bono where she put a ton of time in, way more than we were paid, but it was to help people. And so it's a balance, but we also have our own families. And so within our firm, we do have payment plans in terms of breaking down the overall payment, but it's on a kind of a case by case basis. So
And I would say too, Elisa, depending on which city you're living in, many of the large cities in Canada do have some sort of services for people in need. And so sometimes, like Mark said, there are immigration legal clinics. Like in Calgary, we have Calgary Immigrant Women's Association. There's Calgary Legal Guidance. There are a number of different immigrant serving agencies that have some sort of clinics or ways to try to access supports for people who need immigration information. And sometimes there are things through legal aid where you might be able to be eligible. It depends on the province.
Yeah. We'll pull up Dare. Another question here. I have 2 years of Canadian experience as a web developer. Can I work 1 year as a web designer for foreign work experience and qualify for CEC? So remember, Dare, in order to qualify for CEC, you have to demonstrate that you have at least 1 year in the 3 years immediately preceding the date that you file your application. So in this case, it's not the ITA, it's actually the EAPR. And so if you have 2 years of experience and it's current, right, then theoretically you could work 1 year as a web designer if you're no longer working for the Canadian company. And as long as, we don't know all the details and the starts and end dates here, Dare, but as long as you continue to maintain at least 1 year, that is what will continue, like within the previous 3 years, that sliding scale as time passes, that's the one that is going to dictate whether or not you continue to meet CEC. So it may be possible. Yeah.
And maybe, Mark, you can kind of highlight the video that you'd done on foreign work experience. And, in some cases,
Oh, yeah.
you could stay in Canada and claim foreign work experience if you're working for a company outside Canada in order to get that bump in your foreign work experience points. Or some people are looking at, well, you know, if I've maximized my Canadian work experience points, do I then go home to my home country and get that 1 year of foreign work experience in order to also make sure that they are not losing their foreign work experience points?
Wow. This is the problem when you have almost 1,000 videos on your site. That's crazy. 967. I'm going to have a little bit of trouble finding that one. I tried to search for it, and I think that's going to be, well, yeah, we did a video on that, and we talked about the strategy basically of if people do have to go home. Sometimes if you don't have foreign work experience, you have the ability to secure more points through CRS by getting one more year of work experience than staying here and waiting and hoping that the CRS rounds of invitations will go down. So just go to the website and go check it out. Alicia, I don't know if people, when they go to like our YouTube channel, for instance, I was looking on mine, and I don't know if people actually have this search feature, like when you're just connecting in. So you can see all of our videos are here, and we have some organized by playlist. If you click on videos generally, these are the ones, at least that we have done as recordings, like this one will be. Or sorry, Alicia and I just recorded one on certificates of qualification for express entry, because lots of people are uncertain about that. That's the next episode that's going to drop on our podcast within our Time's Up series. So these pre-recorded ones are all in the videos, and then the lives, all of our Q&As are all here, but we have a whole bunch of other ones that are also kind of connected that we've done live streams on. And I did do one on express entry that talked about strategies, and yeah, I don't know. There's
Remember what it was called, Mark?
967, and when I'm here, I can see a search button, but I don't know if other people have that. I don't know. Maybe you can
I
tell
just
me.
logged in. I see it. Yeah.
Do you see it?
So
Okay,
I tried
great.
to go and search by strategies. So yeah.
Okay, good. Okay. So good. So use it, because there is a ton of content. And Google's pretty good at allowing you to search for topics. And we try to make sure our titles and the descriptions are enough to give you information to know what's contained inside. So definitely go and check that out. Okay. Let's see. Here's one from okay, this one is Alphonse. He says, how long does it take to receive an AOR for H&C applications? Thanks. Here's the thing you need to understand, Alphonse. An acknowledgement of receipt doesn't give you an ability to apply for a work permit in the context of a humanitarian and compassion application. You actually have to reach the approval in principle stage. And I'm pretty sure that's correct, right, Alicia? So once you file an H&C application, it's when they accept it as being genuine, or at least meeting the requirements that they deem to justify issuance of a positive H&C decision. It's at that stage that you can then apply for a work permit. But I don't believe at the acknowledgement of receipt stage, just filing it, like is the case with a spousal sponsorship, you're able to get the work permit. But maybe you can check on that. So at the end of the day, we'll take this example of this lady that we talked about. It was probably to get the actual acknowledgement of receipt. It didn't seem to be that long. And remember, it's online, Alphonse. So when you submit the online application, it's not like you're mailing in the package anymore. So it seems to me like it was a couple months. I'm trying to remember, but not sure 100%. Alicia's doing a little bit of digging on the AOR and the eligibility for a work permit with just the acknowledgement. I don't believe that's the case with H&C. I think it has to reach the approval in principle stage, but we'll look that up for you. Okay. Adnan, I'll give you an applause here. He says, I got a letter of support from Alberta for the work permit. And then here we have the continuation. He says, I got a letter of support in Gatom, Alberta. I don't know what that means. Then applied for a work permit and got a letter of extension until July instead of work permit. Never seen that. Well, understand that letter that you got back, I'm assuming, is just the generic letter that says you are valid to keep working. It's not the approval of your work permit. So this is probably what you're confusing, Adnan. when most people file extension applications, IRCC will give them a letter. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time to come, but that letter is just confirms that you're still in valid status, which for all intents and purposes, it doesn't add anything to any, additional legal benefits or rights, because by operation of law, there's a provision that says if you file your application to extend your, in this case, work permit before your current work permit expires, you are eligible to continue working under valid status, which now they call maintained status. The letter is just, for your employer or for other people to just confirm with them that yes, you do indeed still have valid maintained status, but it's not the actual approval. So that's been happening since the pandemic, really. I think 2020, when work permits they basically stopped processing because the lockdowns, and then they just have continued to do it. But yeah, that's the reality.
And the only other thing I'd say, Adnan, is yeah, just be careful, because normally, just like Mark said, you have to actually submit that application. And if you have that R204C support letter, then make sure that you are properly submitting either the bridging open or the bridging closed work permit, depending on whether your certificate of nomination is employer restricted or not. So please take a look at the blog post that I wrote about employer restrictions and whether it's a bridging closed or a bridging open work permit. But if you do have that R204C letter, then you want to make sure that you're applying for the proper bridging permit. The other only thing that I can think of is that there are some exceptional cases, because there was that temporary policy from the federal government that allowed the provinces in certain circumstances to issue a few work permits when people were in the system in a PNP and their work permits were about to expire. And so there was a special provision for a small number of people. And I don't know if that's what you're referring to when you said that letter of extension. So it's possible that you might be in an exceptional circumstance with that, but you will want to make sure that you're properly applying to have work permit status.
Okay, next Super Moy says, do you have any recommendations to learn French? Okay, so here's something I want to point out. We are constantly looking for ways to expand our offering within our Express Entry course. So I'm just going to go here and I'll just show you quickly. So I'm going to go into the member login, log in myself. We have so many different versions and renditions of the Express Entry course. You can see the 2019 version at one time, which was, I think, the third version. Anyways, so if we go through here, I'll try to find the spousal sponsorship Express Entry. Not that one. Where is it? Boy, H1B 2024. I think this is it. Yeah, I think that's the one. So if you go into here and you look at the lessons, you'll see that we have best practices and how to improve your TEF scores. So this lesson right here was provided by our friend Jean, and he specializes in TEF preparation and the exams. So Jean K here is basically a certified French teacher. He has a ton of experience, and I have no reservations recommending him. And so all of his contact information is in here. And if you go back to our YouTube channel and we search up Jean K, let's see if we can find it. You can see there's a great video that he also did, How to Succeed in French. I recommend that you slide over and take a look at that too. But yeah, French is still a very, very important factor when it comes to Express Entry and the direction that our current government is pushing. So that's who I would recommend right now. And then we've got another one here. Let's see if I can find it.
And the other thing that I'll add to
Yes.
that too, and it's not specifically for French, but it's for language test preparation in general, is that sometimes the public library, depending on where you live, like shout out to the Calgary Public Library, they have a fantastic digital library resource, and they specifically have like an IELTS preparation class that's free that you can access through Calgary Public Library digital libraries. So take a look at your local library and see what sort of digital resources they have, because many of them will have things for language preparation for English and French, and they even sometimes have like in-person tutorials or one-on-one tutorials.
Yeah. JLR, if you've got a comment or a question, I couldn't find it, so just let us know, and we'll try to tackle that. Okay. Here's a good one, Alicia. RJ says, does working for CRA as a developer count as government experience?
I guess they're trying to figure out in the background declaration
Yeah.
questions, do you have a government job?
Yeah, the personal history
Yeah.
when you're filling out personal history, there's no harm in classifying it as that. Okay. There's no harm in doing that. So that's how I would respond to that one. Okay, Chris is in the States. He says, I'm an emergency management grants program manager in the US West Coast state. Well, maybe he's California and determines, the fires and whether or not, maybe that's the emergency. Anyways, so that those types of grant program managing kind of, this is a state kind of position, more of a civil kind of servant position, it looks like. But I'm interested in moving to BC. Would this be considered a desired skill set in Canada? Well, that's tough to say, Chris, right? Most positions like this are not ones that we would typically see in demand in provinces. Government jobs and those type of civil servant jobs tend to be pretty popular, and they tend to be ones that that encompass a large number of skill sets and even more general skill sets that that are not as I guess in a situation of critical skill shortage as some others, but it just depends. I don't know, Alicia, if you have anything more to add.
Yeah, and so Chris, what I would normally say if you're an American citizen is one of the first things that I do is I take a look at, okay, what would your points be under a CRS calculation for a federal skilled worker, right? What would your CRS level be at? And then because it's so competitive right now, is there a way that you could possibly get a job in the meantime? And the good thing for Americans, especially for people who are under the age of 45, is that there might be a way to look at transitioning to get a work permit in Canada, build your points up, and then maybe transition to permanent residency through express entry or another economic program. And so one of the first questions I ask for people who have American citizenship is there a possibility for you to find an employer in Canada under the free trade agreement, under the Canada, US, Mexico free trade agreement? So do you hold a professional degree? And so that's one thing where you're going to take a look at the CUSMA and take a look at the list of degrees as a professional, and could you find a job in Canada? So for example, disaster relief insurance claims adjusters are on the list of professionals for CUSMA. So, I'm not sure if that's exactly your background, but it is something you'd want to explore
Mhm.
probably a little bit more to see if you can find a job with a Canadian employer.
Yeah. Here's JLR's question. He says, my wife is an early childhood educator. Is it true that Express Entry is going to include a specific draw for educators this year, as they did with works in demand? I'll say no, JLR, 100%. I don't see any evidence of that. If they were to do a occupation specific, like the category based draws, they would have identified that in the annual levels plan. And right now, there's only 3 that they have identified. I guess anything can change, but typically educators, even early childhood educators, are not occupations that the federal government has identified as being in demand kind of type occupation. So I don't think that's the case. Now, the good Lord knows I've been wrong in the past, but Alicia, what are your thoughts on that? Do you see this type of a position somehow sliding in and there being a specific draw within express entry for ECEs?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. There was something where their ECs were on a list, and we were surprised that they were on there. But I don't think it wasn't for Federal Express Entry. I think it was
No,
for
provincial probably
another
at best.
provincial program, and I can't remember which one it was. Yeah.
Okay, this one is from Amy. She says, I got PR, CEC, refusal for 11 plus months. Had 529. Okay, had a bridging open work permit, but postgrad work permit expires the 21st. If a draw is not done, how can I remain legal? Officer said it was 8 months. So I'm assuming you claimed 11 plus months, but the officer refused and said, no, I only see 8 months. Right here, Amy, book a consult. This is what we do consults with. Last week, the week before was a record for me. Like I think 33 consultations I had. Like this is what Alicia and I do. Look at your situation, and once you understand the facts, give you actual legal advice. So Amy, I recommend you slide over to our website. There are links in the description below to all of these things, and you can access booking a consult right in the top right corner here, speak to a lawyer, and anyone who is going through the express entry process, I strongly encourage you to consider connecting in and subscribing to our express entry accelerator course. This is exactly what it looks like, you guys. So the modules within this course are extremely detailed, and you can see we've got 6 modules. The mastering your documents in and of itself will help you to figure out a number of things. And when we go to the records of employment section, for you, Amy, one thing I'll show you is we have, in addition to all of these sample reference letters here, we have CEC hours of work tool, FSW hours of work tool to help you calculate your points. And in addition to this, I don't know if we've got it here or not, but Igor and I can't remember where the link is, but we've created even custom GPTs to help build out your reference letters and to help you even within your selecting of your knock. So definitely that's an option. Go check it out. The links are in the description below. Okay, Dorwin says, good afternoon. How long will a person required to serve stay in Ontario if his PR was approved and was sponsored by OINP? Thank you. Alicia?
Okay, so you got to stay. You got to make a genuine effort to settle and reside in that province, because otherwise it's an abuse of the system. And so when anybody is doing a PNP application, they literally have to answer a question on their certification saying, yes, this is genuine, this is my intent, this is the proof that I am going to stay in this province if the province nominates me and if my permanent residency is approved. And so it's an obligation that you are making to the government, provincially and federally, if it was an express entry linked application, that you are going to follow through on what you said. And if your intention is not genuine, IRCC can come back, or the province can come back and either take away your nomination, or they can say that you misrepresented, that you were not telling the truth, and they can say that they are going to allege misrepresentation, that you should be barred from Canada for 5 years for not telling the truth. So it is really important that you do follow through, that you stay in the province that you said you were going to stay in, that you make honest to goodness efforts to try to find a job, to settle, to have some sort of residence, to maybe have a driver's license there, open bank account, start a life there. And if you really, really, really cannot make ends meet and cannot make a go of it, then maybe you look at moving, because Canadian permanent residents do have mobility rights under the Charter. So you are able to move provinces. But keep in mind that because of what you signed off on with the province and with immigration federally, that you have obligations to tell the truth and not to misrepresent.
All right, we've got a few more little follow-ups to Amy's question here. Okay, officer said it was 8 months. Okay, then Amy says, I went back to the pool with the same 529. Boy, there's a lot. It was over a year. So yeah, Amy, I think it really is best that you book a consult and we can try to tackle this. Because I'm not exactly, your additional comments haven't clarified anything for me. So I'm still a little bit confused as to what's really going on. Okay, let's pull up the cutest YouTube handle I've ever seen in the history of the world. That is awesome. Ducky. Oh my goodness. That is so, look at that little cute duck. When we were on the farm, we did raise chicks and ducks and all those little fuzzy, cute little critters. Oh my goodness. So fun. The only problem with duckies is that they do get older and then they poop everywhere. But when they're little, they definitely are super, super cute. Okay. Ducky says, can I remove work experience after an ITA? The Sierra score will be above the cutoff. So a 11.2 assessment, Alicia, what do you think about that? Is it okay for Ducky to remove work experience if it doesn't affect the CRS score? The CRS score isn't the only thing to be concerned about, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so Ducky, there's a few moving parts. So it depends on whether you're getting called under CEC. It depends on whether you are claiming like federal skilled worker, if you had to meet the minimum 67 points on a federal skilled worker cutoff. It depends on whether you've got a PNP application and a nomination where that work experience might be relevant. Um, there are definite risks if you are changing things after your ITA, and the other risk is misrepresentation. And so sometimes because it's taken so long to get an ITA, some of that older work experience, maybe from like 10 years ago, is now getting to that 10-year mark and it's no longer relevant. It's not included within the 10-year calculation. But you need to be super careful, and I would recommend you book a consult if you're thinking about removing work experience after an ITA, because there's a number of minefields.
All right. Thanks, Alicia. You guys, we we are at quitting time. We're into overtime a little bit. I think this week I may very well do another live Q&A. There's just so many people, and we're just not able to get through all of the questions. And so, we've got about 350 people watching live. I think just because of the volume, and Ducky says CEC, because of excuse me, because of the volume, I think I may do it maybe on Friday. We'll see how it works. I've I'll talk with Igor. I don't know if Alicia, she's got a busy life right now, but excuse me, on Friday I may very well do another live just to try to accommodate a few more people. There's some great questions here. And yeah, I wish we could get to all of them, but we're just not going to be able to. We're going to have to shut it down, unfortunately. Let's see.
And Mark, while you're searching
Yes.
for another question, I did in our chat, I did find your YouTube video on the
Okay.
strategies for people who want to look at potentially claiming foreign work experience, and it's
Oh,
called
that's the
Unlocking
image.
Permanent Residence in Canada. So there you go.
That's the
I
one.
put it in the chat, and you can share the link because I
Okay.
did manage to
Okay.
find it.
That's right. And it was alive. I think I did. I was looking for the wrong kind of handle here. Oh, that was a fun one. You guys missed out if you didn't watch the Halloween one. Seriously, that was fantastic. It's the one with the animation that I did here.
Yeah. And if you search for unlocking permanent residence in Canada, a surprising
That's the one.
strategy for foreign workers. Yeah. And I did put the direct link to the video in our
Oh,
chat too.
okay. Oh, there's a few unlocking. It's this one here. So, Express Entry 2024, surprising strategy to increase CRS, but why is no one talking about it? So this one here, yeah, this is the one that's the unlocking. It's the guy with the Canada flag, a nice AI generated image. All right. Okay, guys, I think, Alicia, we're going to wrap it up there. I don't think we've missed anyone else. Thank you so much, everybody. Oh, we got one more that slipped in. Okay, this is the last one. Don't drop any more super chats, okay? Let's see here. Ducky, I really encourage you to book a consult. She says, can I remove work experience after the ITA? So we covered that. And then you said CEC. And so, yeah, I really recommend you book a consult. Okay, Tenadeep got slipped in one last one. He says, CRS 475, without a spouse 494. She is on a spousal open work permit. Can I file express entry? Oh, we cover this in the course. We talk with our clients about this all the time. She's on a spousal. Can I file express entry CEC without spouse with reason? The scores are lower. Any issues with my PR or my spouse PR in the future? Alicia, if I was to tackle this one, when you have a spouse that's here, I have seen procedural fairness letters alleging misrepresentation when you have a spouse who's here in Canada and you say they're not accompanying. It kind of is a little bit of a contradiction. Ultimately, any officer can make whatever decision they want, but I think there's pretty significant risk that if your spouse is already here and you say that they are non-accompanying, that you could run into that problem. Alicia, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it also, I mean, if you were able to do it and your spouse was not here, for example, then you could file, but then keep in mind that you would then have to turn around, and if your application is approved, you would then have to sponsor your spouse, and keep in mind that spousal sponsorships are going to take at least another year after your PR. So there could be a prolonged period of separation of your family.
Yes. And that, you guys, sucks. Just there's a ton of questions about express entry. I want to remind everyone that the Express Entry Accelerator is my flagship course that covers every aspect of Express Entry. There's checklists, there is sample documents, there are just a ton of resources. There's a complete walkthrough of both the Express Entry profile and the Express Entry, the EAPR, just eligibility stuff. There's everything you could imagine. As I learn something new, I add it to the course. And we do have our reference letter builder, custom GPT built into this now to help you identify your knock codes and things like that, help you to generate properly worded reference letters. And all of those pieces are all contained in here. And the part that I love the most is the master classes that happen in a more intimate format than this live Q&A. They happen every 2 weeks. I'm actually doing one tonight starting at 4 Mountain Time. When you subscribe to the course, you have access to not only this course, you guys, but any future updates that you may want or need. And you can come back as many times as you want to the master classes, and it's me. And because it's a more intimate group, we focus exclusively on Express Entry. We dive into the deep details that we can't in such a, in a live Q&A like this. And so I strongly encourage you to click on the link. There's one in the show notes below and the description, and join us. I'll be going live tonight at 4 p.m. All right. And as always, don't hesitate to check out all of the other resources we have on our Holthe Immigration Law website. I'll slide over here. I want to particularly draw your attention to our blog and resources. The blog often is full of much more detailed content than we are able to cover in our live streams. Don't forget, if you are a commuter and you're making your way through this freezing cold commute to work, check out our podcast, because this is where you can listen to all of the content that we're producing here. You can subscribe on iTunes or in Spotify. And, once you're connected in, pay close attention, all of you, to our Time's Up series, which are a series of podcasts that are all geared towards you guys that are running out of time. And I would start with episode 149 and work your way forward. There's something literally for everyone, and information is power, you guys. Okay, we will wrap it up today. And thank you so much, everyone who posted questions. Like I said, stay tuned. If you have not yet subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do that. You will then get notified if I am able to get a little bit of time carved out to do another live stream. I'm just looking at my calendar right now, and it is, it's pretty full. So Friday we have our strategy call. It looks so. We will see how it all plays out. All right, guys, thanks so much, and we will see you again in our next live Q&A. Good luck navigating this crazy world we call Canadian immigration.